I ask y'all to do first. Let me turn that. Is that? Can y'all still hear me if I turn the volume down a little bit? I was just getting some feedback there. What we're going to do first, I'm going to start down there with you, Senator, and who you are and where you're from, and not putting you on the spot, but I am a little bit, if you have a military background, but I would like to know that as well. So thank you. Go ahead.
Sure will. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Delighted to be here. My name is Josh McLaurin. I represent the newly constituted Senate District 14, which is entirely contained within Fulton County. It goes from basically Lenox Square up to Old Milton Parkway in Alpharetta. This is my first committee meeting in the Senate, so I'm excited about that too. And I have no direct military background myself. My father was in the Navy, so I've residually picked up on some of our most sacred principles and values, Mr. Chairman. So. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. If there's people in the audience, they just like to know who they're talking with here. Are you 9? 8. Okay.
And I would like to know who I'm serving. I am State Senator Tanya Anderson of Georgia's 43rd District, which covers portions of DeKalb, Rockdale, and Newton County. In Newton County, I do have a National Guard unit. I am an Air Force, and we aim high girl. My father is a Korean conflict veteran. I have uncles, cousins, Air Force, Army, one Marine cousin, and so I served 10 years in logistics and 12 as a chaplain's assistant.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chuck Payne. I'm represent the 54th District of Georgia, which is Whitfield, Murray, and Gordon counties, Calhoun and Dalton, city of Calhoun and Dalton, big cities. I also served in the 1st 504th Infantry 82nd Airborne Division when I jumped out of an airplane. And I jumped out of the Air Force planes, and I came to realize that the Air Force really can't tell wind speed from a moving aircraft.
We got you where you was going.
But they really can't. They'd say 0 knots, and you go flying across the drop zone. Then they say to come next time, and they'd say make 4 passes because if the wind's too strong, and you come out and you come straight down. So that's all I'm saying. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Dr. Leathers, nobody ever, you gonna talk.
Oh, wow. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Leathers, and no, I haven't served in the military, but I've been fortunate to have people in my family and a lot of good friends who have served in different areas of the armed forces, and I have the opportunity to serve with these great people each day here at the Capitol. So, and thank you all for your service to the United States.
And what she didn't tell you is she has served as my assistant over the last few years, and if anybody deserves hazardous duty pay, it's her, because she's got to go around and sweep up behind me all the time, so I appreciate her always making sure that we're on the right foot. Okay. Senator?
Me? You figured out my microphone number all by yourself? Thank you. I'm Kay Kirkpatrick, and I represent Senate District 32, which is Cobb and Cherokee counties. And my whole family are veterans, including my World War II veteran dad. And my father-in-law, who's also World War II, he's 98 now. And I serve in the Georgia State Defense Force as a volunteer, which is an Army group that assists the National Guard. And I also represent Dobbins Air Reserve Base on the governor's, the Georgia Joint Defense Commission. Happy to be here. Thank you.
10? Okay. Hi, my name is Nabila Islam. I am the senator from the newly created 7th District in West Gwinnett, which includes 6 cities, Peachtree Corners, Berkeley Lake, Duluth, Norcross, Sewanee, and Lawrenceville. I do not have a military background, but I certainly support our military and veterans, and I'm happy to be here. It's my first committee meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, long time no see. How are you? I'm Jason Anavatari. I serve in the 31st Senate District in Dallas, Georgia, so Paulding and Polk County. I am the son of an Army veteran who served in Korea, served in Vietnam, and was a Purple Heart recipient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Commissioner Ross. Again, I owe you dinner this time. Is that right? Okay, all right. But my name is Ed Harbison. I serve the 15th Senatorial District. That's Fort Benning is housed there, and we're always glad to see you down at the various events. The Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. I'm honored to be affiliated with that organization. They do a lot of great work. The only veteran in my family, not the only veteran, I had a brother who served in the Navy, another uncle who served in World War II as part of the Red Ball Express that provided vital supplies during World War II. And but unfortunately, I didn't know that until after he passed. But anyway, glad to serve. Thank you.
What Senator Harbison didn't tell you is that he's, in addition to being the dean of the Senate, he stormed the beaches at Okinawa during World War II. No, he is a Vietnam vet as a Marine, Purple Heart recipient. He didn't duck fast enough. No, and a dear friend with a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we're thankful to have him on the committee. I'm Mike Dugan. I'm the senator for the 30th District, and have the awesome responsibility of being the chair of this committee for this term. I retired Army. I did 20 years, 2 months, and 4 days, and 6 hours. But I loved every minute of it, and it's funny because I tell people a lot. How did I get to where I was? I graduated from college and enlisted in the Army because I felt like I had an obligation, and I wanted to do my 2 years. I fell in love with the Army. I said, of all the things that I liked doing, this was all of them wrapped in one thing. So I got commissioned, became part of the Airborne Ranger community, and loved every second of it. I don't now, because it hurts every morning when I wake up, but at the time, it was great. And no, the Air Force, not take that back. The Air Force got us to where we were going, not necessarily where we were supposed to be going. So,
You have to figure out how to make your way.
Yes, yes. And the one war story on that, Air Force was, hey, we're going to drop you. The winds are really high. We're going to drop you way over the trees and hope that you blow near the drop zone. And I said, all right. And so you did it, near the drop zone. Okay, the first thing I want to do, if y'all look into your folder, you'll see in there a loose leaf of paper that's the rules for the committee. We have to do this each session. So if you would just take a second, look over them, and if you have any questions, because I'm going to ask for a motion on this in just a second. Do I have a motion for the rules?
I so move that we adopt the rules.
I have a motion and a second.
You got it first.
All right. Rules are approved. So the next thing we're going to do is we have a presentation by Commissioner Ross. Commissioner Ross, we are so thankful to have you here. As you and I were talking earlier, and I have not talked to the committee members about this. If you wait for stuff that is a positive impact to Georgian veterans, the veterans' families, and those that are currently serving on active duty within the military to come to this committee, is going to be a very boring year in Veterans, Military Affairs, and Homeland Security. We are going to proactively look for ideas and ways that we can, because we have one of the largest retiring communities of any state in the nation. And there are several things that, before you even get into your presentation, there's always this entity that's laying around out there called BRAC. And we want to ensure that BRAC stays away from Georgia. For those of y'all that are not familiar with BRAC, BRAC stands for Base Realignment and Closure. And I think it's every 5 years the federal government is mandated to look for, to create efficiencies within the Department of Defense, and oftentimes that means closing down installations. Regardless of the size of the installation in the state of Georgia, it makes an extreme positive impact on the communities in which they're located. So we don't want them coming to Georgia. You don't wait until the BRAC Commission is set before you start trying to find measures to make sure that we're safeguarding our installations here. And we have 11, if I remember right, across the state. And all of them are extremely important for not only the state on a fiscal way, but also the nation and the military. So with that being said, knowing that we're going to be proactive, knowing that we're going to focus on BRAC, and knowing that we're going to focus on veterans and their families, Commissioner, I hand it over to you to tell me how I'm going to do that. I got you.
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Number 4. There you go. I'm Trish Ross. I am a 25-year active duty Air Force veteran, but come from a long line of military veterans. My grandfather, World War II, served in Europe with the Army. My father was also an Air Force veteran, Vietnam veteran, 2 tours. In fact, I was born while he was over there. My husband also is an Air Force veteran. My father-in-law, a Navy veteran, 2 cousins, Coast Guard veterans, and I found out not too long ago that my grandmother's twin cousins were both Women Air Corps, both of them. So we have a long lineage. All I'm missing is a Marine, and I made the mistake of saying that I had a single daughter last time I said I'm missing a Marine in the family, and I probably shouldn't have said that. So there's 3 things that I'd like to accomplish today, and I really appreciate y'all inviting me here. With me, I have my Executive Director for Health and Memorials, Finance and Development, Mr. Mark Bannister, and my Chief Operating Officer, Carrie Dyer. Both are retired Army. But what I'd like to do, and please feel free to ask me questions because I really do like answering questions, is to give you an overview of what our department does. Secondly, talk about issues that your constituents may be asking you, and so kind of give you a little bit of information so that you come across as informed on some of the big things that are changing in veterans benefits. And then the third thing is also to inform you of things that may come up this session. So that's kind of how I've structured this briefing. But first, I just wanted to give you an overview. So we've never had this slide before, and hopefully I'll do a good job as I created it. We get a lot of confusion as to what the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs does and what your State Department of Veterans Service does. So just to lay it out, one, VA Benefits Administration, that's who we work with for veterans in the state of Georgia and their surviving dependent spouses, children, whoever's entitled to benefits. That's who we work with to get those VA benefits. On the National Cemetery Administration, that's the second kind of legged stool of the VA. We do have 2 cemeteries that we manage here within the state of Georgia. And then VA Health is where most folks get us confused. So VA Health are the ones that have your medical centers, your clinics, they have doctors, they've got pharmacies, they do prosthetics, eyeglasses, hearing aids, all of that. We do not have a hospital health component. Our one interaction with them is we do have 2 state veterans homes, 2 war veterans homes. And so that's really where the difference lies. Every state in the nation, as well as 5 territories, has an organization like us. We are all organized a little bit differently, but our purpose here is to serve Georgia's veterans and to help them get their earned benefits. And in some form or fashion, we found out we've been around almost 100 years in various iterations, but we're here to support Georgia's veterans and their families. So the reason why I show you this map, and to Chairman Dugan's previous comment, we have a large population of veterans. We're sitting just shy of 700,000. And you can see that, you know, the other big states, we were 9th in the nation a year ago. We're now 8th in the nation for veteran population. And in 2 years, we're projected to be 6th in the nation. Why, you may ask? Well, one, the overall veteran population is declining, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But we're also having a lot of veterans relocate to Georgia. And so that's why you see our ranking as far as the nation goes, actually increasing in the next couple of years. And so when you look at this population, and I did break it out by male and female, and I'll tell you why. We've had a slight decline, about 7,000 veterans we've lost between last year and this year. But we're actually staying fairly stable when you look at every other state across the nation. And the reason why is, again, relocation, but why you see this demographic map and why it's so important is these are our younger veterans. As we lose some of our older generation of veterans, what we're seeing is our younger veterans, your Gulf War veterans, post 9/11 veterans needing more and more care and having more service-connected disabilities. So that, in fact, creates more, I would say, more work for our department. We've got more to do to reach those veterans. Interestingly enough, we're also increasing the number of female veterans here in the state. You can see that in 2021, we were at 14.4%. Our female veteran population just by 2025 is going to grow to 15.7%, which is well above the national average. And I do have to say, we have the fastest growing population of women veterans in the country. And so I do want to thank the General Assembly. Back in 2018, y'all approved a women veterans coordinator, knowing that we were going to grow with our women veterans population. And you can see they've been very busy. So about 93,000 are women. And we do events across the state specifically for women veterans. We do know a large number, anywhere between 25 and 40% of women veterans have been subject to military sexual trauma. So that can cause some additional challenges when you're talking about VA benefits, and it takes some special people with some special training to be able to talk to those women. Not saying that it's specifically only to women veterans, but that is the preponderance of the population that does suffer for MST. So we've got folks that do their claims and actually guide them through the appeals process and are there with the judges for their hearings. And we're now holding annual conferences to recognize our women veterans, because many women veterans don't feel recognized. They feel very invisible. They're not necessarily, and I'm looking at Senator Anderson, you can't necessarily recognize us in a crowd. We don't wear the caps. We don't wear the paraphernalia that says, hey, I served during Iraq and Afghanistan. And so we're trying to make sure that our women veterans are recognized appropriately. And we thank you so much for adding that position. When you talk about kind of the bread and butter of what we do, that's the claims process. And the reason we just created this slide is you can see all the touch points that Georgia Department of Veterans Service has. So when somebody comes in and says, hey, while serving in the military, I developed this illness or injury, they come to us, we help them file that claim. We're certified by the VA to legal standards. That goes to the VA reviews it, and more often than not, returns it for one reason or another. If it's granted, it goes on its way. If the veteran is happy and believes that that is a fair compensation for whatever their disability is, it ends there. But more often than not, the veteran does not believe that, or the veteran service officer does not believe that, and so it comes back to us. And we either initiate what's called a higher level review, so it goes up to somebody higher in the VA chain, or we add additional information with a supplemental claim. Then it goes back through that process. that process never ends. If the veteran chooses it never to end, you can consistently be submitting claims and then going to the appeals process. So just wanted you to know that's kind of multiple touch points. The same veteran, it could be the same issues, but we're now working it at many different levels, again, to try and ensure that veteran or their family members get the benefits they're entitled to.
Commissioner,
Yes, sir.
you said we could ask questions as we're going on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Senator, you had a question?
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Very interesting stuff, and it's definitely getting me acquainted for sure. What role do attorneys play, or I guess maybe what is the type of representation that's happening by, I mean, because it sounds like what the state agency or department is doing is serving as an advocate with the federal government for claims. Is it kind of like an attorney-client relationship? Are there actual attorneys? Is it more like a claims manager? Like what's the nature of the representation that's happening with the VA?
Okay, let me characterize it this way. So our relationship with the veteran is the same as they would have if they went out and got legal services for their claims. We sign a power of attorney. We are representing them through the appeals process and in hearings.
Okay.
The difference is the state of Georgia pays for our folks to do this at no cost, just like every other state in the nation. By law, attorneys get at a minimum 30% of whatever is returned to the veteran.
Okay, so there's a contingency fee.
There is a contingency
okay.
fee. And yes, so we're trained to the same standards. We all follow the same title. We have to get accredited by the VA, which is, twice a month classes we have to pass, an annual training, long exam we have to pass, just like any lawyer would do.
So it's almost like a self-contained practice of law that you don't have to be a barred attorney.
Exactly.
But you can be a claims agent and then statutorily compensated, and I guess that's a source of revenue for the state then?
No.
It goes directly to the individual
It goes directly to the
Okay.
individual.
But
In
they're
fact,
employed by the state.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
employed by the state.
Okay.
But I will tell you, in fact, that's my next slide.
Okay,
Perfect segue.
That's all I got.
Thank you for that. You can see that although the number of veterans has decreased, the money that we're bringing in that goes, again, directly to the veteran or their survivors, whoever it's entitled to, has increased over the years. In fact, last year alone, we brought in almost $3.6 billion into the state. So everybody else, which includes legal representation and or other veteran service officers who may be with another agency, they're kind of few and far between, and the VA accounted for a total of 5.1 as a state. So great return on investment, but it does not come back to the state. It goes directly to the veteran or their survivors. Yeah. Is there another question?
Oh, there it is. So I do have a question.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
your comment was that as an advocate, there's 30% that goes to come back to the state for advocating for that person.
No, and I'm sorry if I
Okay.
may have incorrectly stated that. If you as a veteran get legal representation,
Oh,
so
okay.
your power of attorney is with a lawyer or a
Okay.
law firm, they get 30%
Okay.
by law.
Okay.
We don't get anything.
Okay.
Which is why we do advocate to come see us, because we are free to the veteran and to their family.
So I think that was, yeah, okay. Thank you. Good? Senator?
And just to add, just very briefly, Commissioner, I think it's worthwhile to note that a lot of people who are not lawyers are representing veterans regarding their pension and their disability payments, and they're being very successful. And they are not lawyers, but they charge, I think, between 20 and 30%. It's not illegal with it, and I'm just saying and it's a pretty good turnaround. So there may be other areas you can explore, and they're open about it, and it's an agreement between the veteran and the person advocating for him. But the write his proper papers up, so they are approved. Usually they are, and you may have, a lot of people have heard about it, but they are out there. So,
Yeah.
and they do a good job.
And I know they are out there. You know, there's lots of organizations out there that
That's right.
represent veterans. I would just have to caveat
And-
that. So anybody.
And some of them don't charge them. Some
Right.
of the- yeah.
So anybody, and I'm going to pick on Senator Anderson because I know Senator Anderson. If Trish Ross, non-veteran, non-VA accredited, certified, by the way, I'm number 207, said, Senator Anderson, I'd like to help you with your claim. Anybody off the street can do that. People with knowledge can do that. You don't have to be accredited to do that the first time. But when it comes back and the VA has denied your claim, you need to go through somebody that is accredited by the VA. And so all of our service officers go through that VA accreditation, like I said, which is getting into Title 38, which is our governing law, CFR Title 38. And we also get updates on everything new coming out, which I know I'll talk about in a minute, which is the PACT Act, kind of the newest legislation from the VA to make sure we are all up to speed. And we also know the diagnostic codes. We know what could be a secondary condition. We know how to interview a veteran to pull out some of the information that they may not even be thinking of when they come into us and just say, hey, you know, my knee hurts. I used to jump out of airplanes. You know, can we get me service connected?
And it is also true, is it true also that a lot of the times when the veterans get representation from yourself or anybody else, that they file the claims and maybe the reports are delayed, like during COVID or something like that, then they turn and go to somebody else and file another claim. Isn't it true that that holds up the initial one because they have to go back, it's my understanding, and start over again from that first point, I mean from the last point. Is that a fair
That
statement?
is, yes. So
Okay.
what happens is if you file a claim and you decide, okay, I don't want to be represented by Georgia Department of Veterans Service because it's taking too long, and you refile the claim, one, the VA will go back and try and ascertain, you know, is it the same claim? But in many cases, for that other organization to take your power of attorney, they will tell you to withdraw that claim and start over with them. That resets your clock.
Yeah.
And even though you may have submitted it under one organization, it's not retroactive if you withdraw it and start all over with another organization. And unfortunately, that does hurt our veterans. Just so you know, when you come into anybody's office, but our office specifically, and file what they call an intent to file. So we have your power of attorney, you do an intent to file. You have 365 calendar days to get us the documentation in which to send to the VA and get that claim. And then it is retroactive to the date you put in that intent to file. So that does give the veteran or their families the time to get the documentation in to prove that whatever that injury or illness was or is, it was service connected.
Good.
I'm done. Thank you.
Clarification on something I think I
Yes,
just heard
sir.
you say. You do a reevaluation on the disability percentage? Is that what I understood you to say? If you separate and you get disability from the military and you get a percentage, do you reevaluate?
So we don't reevaluate anything. The VA does the reevaluation. But if you come in and say, for instance, when I separated from the military, I'm only getting 40%. I believe that I'm having significant issues or more significant issues with whatever was already filed and has been service connected, or I'm having additional issues that I can show, hey, I went to military sick call for this or that. We will resubmit the claim to try and get your percentage rating increased.
All right, I'm going to be giving you a call. Thank you. Next.
Okay, well, we do have an office close to you, and that's what this slide is. This is all of our locations. We have grown. A year ago, we've grown 5 offices in the last year with no additional personnel. What we did is we took a look at the state and said, where are the largest numbers of our veterans? And we moved some positions around. As best as we can, we try to co-locate with VA facilities. And you may ask why. You showed me that first slide that says you want to be distinct from the VA and want folks to know you're somebody different. The reason why is, one, they give us space at no cost. And the second reason is when our veterans go to the VA, and many of them do, and get that paperwork from that physician that then shows that what they're claiming is service connected, they can just walk it down to our office. We can file it in their folder. It goes direct into the VA system. It makes it easier on our veterans. So we're co-located in VA facilities at 22 of our offices. The rest are mostly with other state agencies. So let me tell you how we did this last year. I already told you our veteran population is declining, but we had an increase of 70,000 calls from last year to this year. We saw about 20,000 more veterans in our offices from last year to this year. We increased, again, our field offices. We had interments of about 500 veterans or their spouses in our 2 cemeteries. As far as our homes go, and that's going to be some further slides going in our war veterans homes, we're about the same. Our net overall was about a loss of 15, and there are reasons for that between our 2 homes in Milledgeville and in Augusta. So when you look at our appeals or our hearings, you can see that we did just over 1,100 actual hearings in front of a veterans law judge, but 3,200 of those actions we were able to resolve without going in front of a judge for those veterans that had appealed their VA decision. So those are pretty good numbers. When I said I wanted to talk to you about some things your constituents may be asking you about, the biggest thing is the PACT Act. So the PACT Act was signed into law August 10th of 2022. And so if your veterans are submitting claims under the PACT Act, it'll actually right now be retroactive back to August. And the VA started processing these claims on 1 January. Here are some of the big things. For our Vietnam era veterans, they expanded the locations that they now show there was Agent Orange exposure to places like Laos, Thailand, Johnson's Atoll, American Samoa. So I know Senator Harbison was over there. My father was over there. You can't have been in and around that vicinity and not been exposed to Agent Orange. So now that is considered presumptive if you can show you were in those locations. For my generation of veterans, so Gulf War and now post 9/11, they have associated a significant number of cancers as well as illnesses with exposures to toxins. So the PACT Act is the promise to address comprehensive toxics and is 23 new presumptive conditions. So you can see the list for our Gulf War and post 9/11, but it is quite a few cancers. And the advantage, and I would say, to this list for our Gulf War post 9/11 versus what the VA did for Vietnam is they gave us broader categories of cancers. So where Vietnam was very specific, lung cancer wasn't included, but esophageal cancer was. Here you've got gastrointestinal cancers, which could be many, head cancers, which could be many. So these are all considered, if you have these cancers and were exposed based on your time of service and were in the Middle East during the Gulf War and post 9/11 conflicts, that I won't say as an automatic, you still have to apply, but the VA will consider that service connected without you having to submit a whole bunch of documentation from medical providers.
Okay, do have a question. Senator McLaurin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. When a modification like this happens, especially something this significant, what type of process does the state have for promulgating what I would, I guess, characterize as practice updates, not only to the department, but also to folks outside of, like you're saying, there are private entities that are managing this. Does the state have any role to play in sort of continuing education for those advocates? And then I guess the follow-up question would be, how do we hold people accountable for knowing about changes in the scope of care coverage if there are these opportunities that weren't previously there?
Okay, so Senator McLaurin, I think you're a plant. So here's the answer to your question. Multifaceted approach. So from my office through our public information division, everything out on socials, sending out information, emails, we're conducting a whole bunch of various veterans fairs. So the last one we did was in Canton. We actually were on site at Kennesaw State to do one next month. And we have these planned out throughout the year. Now we're doing this with our VA counterparts. I know everybody likes to bash the VA. The VA has done a tremendous job in getting the word out about the PACT Act. I know myself and my husband got letters that said, hey, we showed you were in the service during this time and you served in the Middle East. You may need to come in and get screened. So what we're doing in combination with our VA counterparts, I'll give you the Canton, because that's kind of the model we're doing. We partnered with the Atlanta VA. They brought in VA Health to do screenings that said, okay, bring in your DD-214, so your military separation documents that say where you were and when. Okay, you were here, we show you were here, you have this condition, okay, it looks like you may qualify under the PACT Act, and then they were sending them to our individuals to then get claims filed on the spot. And so we are working not only with them, but we're working with our university system and our technical college system for space, because we love free space, to now do this across the state now through the end of this year, to hold these sessions. It's not only just about information, but actually getting these claims filed on site.
One follow-up, sir?
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Is there any sort of potential pitfall or like a window in which someone can miss an opportunity, like a statute of limitations, if this type of modification comes out and you don't file timely enough? Or is it just kind of something that lingers there until you realize you've got your issue and you can document it?
It is the latter. So there
Okay.
is no time clock on the PACT Act where it sunsets at on a certain date. It is now open. Now, of course, you then have, it's now backdated to August the 10th of 2022. So going forward, after a year, we're guessing the VA is going to come out and say, okay, you have to do your intent to file. You can get backdated your 365 days or whenever you did that intent to file to get compensated for anything that may have developed subsequent to this legislation passing.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so the impact on Georgia, just that bottom statement, I think it's important. When we looked at our demographics of the 700,000 veterans here in Georgia, about 500,000 are Vietnam era or Gulf War or post 9/11. So that's a significant number that may be eligible for additional entitlements through the PACT Act, which is why we're doing such a concerted effort to actually get out into the communities and we're working with mayors, we're working with counties, we're working with systems to try and go to almost any event that we think there'll be a significant number of veterans at, to make sure that the word gets out and they can file.
So you say burn pits on it. Everybody that was served over there, unless you're talking about some specific type of burn pit.
Was exposed to burn pits. Absolutely, yes, sir.
So I get to look forward to any of this
It-
menu of stuff here? All right, this meeting's over. I got stuff I got to do before I die.
Yeah. I saw the list as well, as did members of my team, and we're like, oh my goodness, this is scary. I'm going to develop all these cancers. Hopefully not, if depending on your exposure, the length of exposure, but they have linked all of these illnesses with exposure to what was being burned.
Okay, I'm sorry, to add on to this, what I haven't seen anywhere in here, I see two distinct starts and finishes.
Mm-hmm.
Within Bosnia, within the Balkans, anywhere in the Balkans?
They are, so that is not considered presumptive condition. The Balkan era, so Kosovo and Bosnia, aren't in the VA's presumptive list. That being said, and I was discussing this with somebody that called earlier today. Just because the VA doesn't have this, your era of service and a presumptive condition on a list, doesn't mean we can't go in and through your medical documentation say, you were here. We may need what's called a nexus letter, a letter from a doctor that says more likely than not, 50% or greater, your condition was caused by military service because you were exposed to burn pits in Bosnia. We file that with the VA. And so it doesn't have to be on this list for us to file it. We just have to work with the medical documentation to get it submitted in the system.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask you more questions for a second until you get to the next slide.
Again, I like questions. And I know I talked earlier about our Women Veterans Coordinator, the General Assembly, and y'all gave us back in 2018. I do have to mention the amazing job. We now have a brand new suicide prevention and outreach coordinator, which was approved last legislative cycle, and we hired her on 1 July. So this is what she's been up to. These numbers have probably changed as of today because she is always going out and training suicide prevention. Not only our own offices, but she's going out to the Legion Post and the VFW post and any organization that would like her to train about suicide prevention and what to look for. On that left side is something called the Georgia Prevention for Suicide Assessment. This is being piloted now in 4 of our offices. We'll go to all 55 of our offices, but is a short 4-question survey to determine somebody's risk. If they pop up as being high risk, that then goes to our suicide prevention coordinator and another member of our staff, as well as Kennesaw State University, who has partnered with us. We got a grant from the Department of Veterans Affairs to do this, to then go do some further assessments to find out what really is the risk for this individual, as well as if there's, an acute risk or an immediate risk, getting them to the right organization, whether it's having to call 911, call 988, dial 1, whether it's getting them to our community-based mental health providers or the VA. We are rolling this out now, piloting, like I said, for January, and we'll be starting to pilot more next month until we get everybody fielded. So we're really hoping that this helps identify kind of where resources are needed, as well as, of course, prevent suicide, because that is just one is too many. So talking a little bit, shifting to still our current mission for our Georgia War Veterans homes. We do have 2. And I did put the admission criteria. We've got 1 in Milledgeville, 1 in Augusta, and you can see that our capacity is greater than what our current load is. And let me explain that. You can see my little asterisks down there. We're undergoing ADA renovations, and we have some more money coming to also do some additional ADA renovations. Both of these facilities were built in the 50s. As you can imagine, they were more the hospital-like settings with 4 people to a room. The bathrooms and the showers are down the hall. The ADA renovations, one, expand the doorway so that you can get a wheelchair in, puts a toilet, a sink in there, at least Jack and Jill style. Bathing, of course, is still right now done down the hall. There's only so much you can do with a 1950s building. But that's why the capacity is greater than what our current patient load is because we're doing a lot in these buildings. There is a new model of care that I know Senator Kirkpatrick and I have talked at length about, and we're trying to get to that within our current facilities. But if you look at future facilities, we did have Kennesaw State.
Sorry,
Yes, sir.
semantics. You're talking about anybody that was involved in the hostile fire zone, not wartime.
No, it's wartime service. So it's pretty much, they've defined it, that's everything from, well, now it's World War II, because we don't have anybody else, to current, is what the admissions criteria is. At one point, Cold War was not in there, and they've now expanded that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so we did contract out with Kennesaw State's the Center for Advancement of Military and Emergency Services Research to find out if we needed additional veterans homes. We did know, looking around us in the southeast, that we had doubled the population of, say, Alabama and South Carolina, but only half the number of homes. Florida, of course, has a lot of homes. Same, North Carolina, we're neck and neck with North Carolina. They have 5 homes, we have our 2. And so what they determined was there's kind of an immediate need in kind of central South Georgia as well as in North Georgia, because those 2 areas really aren't served by our Milledgeville and our Augusta homes. They're just too far away. I don't think anybody wants to put their loved one where it's going to take 3 or 4 hours to go visit them. And that's also where we had a large population of older veterans with a lower socioeconomic status that weren't currently using, say, VA benefits. And so there appeared to be a greater need. Those are the 2 kind of areas they said would be short-term where we'd need to put homes. And of course, the largest number of veterans we have are in the metro area. Gwinnett, Cobb, our 2 biggest counties for veterans. But right now they're younger veterans. So based on the study, and I did bring a copy with me and I can send it to you, but potentially looking future to those areas as those veterans age. I do know, so we've had initial discussions with OPB. This is just for information only. They would like to see our rates in our current homes rise before they look at potentially increasing the number of homes we have in the state. But just so you know, because I probably should have put this on the slide, construction, it's a matching grant with the VA, so the state is 35% is the match, and then the VA pays for 65% of the construction. So, but then the state also has to, of course, budget, we appropriate for operations of the home. So it is a long-term cost.
Senator Kirkpatrick, you have a
Yeah,
question?
I was just going to say, we spent a lot of time on this over the summer, and I think the bottom line is this is a process that's going to take a while to catch us up with our surrounding states. And it's about the money. Unfortunately, the VA does have this matching thing, but we do have the full report from the Kennesaw State group that studied this, and we'll send that to everybody so that you can review it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, also, this was supported by the state and was matching $6 million from the state and then funds from the VA for what we're calling our transitional support unit. To me, this is very exciting because we are the first state to do this. You saw the list of the PACT Act conditions. What we are seeing for long-term care are veterans who are younger. And in fact, within the last few months in our Milledgeville homes, we had 2 veterans admitted who were in their early 50s. Our oldest veteran we admitted was in their early 70s. That's very different from what used to be our geriatric population. And so what this transitional support unit will do when it's fully operational is will allow us to address some of those co-occurring diagnoses, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, in many cases some memory support issues as well as combat injuries, give them full-time support as well as bring in mental and behavioral health providers with the intent of trying to give them intensive services in an inpatient facility to then integrate them back with their family and their community. So what you see there right now is a 14-bed facility that is kind of independent living, which is what they'll transition into before they go home. But we do have the 60-bed Russell building that is meant for those coming in where they will get all of that advanced rehabilitation and therapies. And so again, we're the first state to do this. We're really Fingers crossed will open sometime this summer. Right now, we're struggling. Of course, this is a contracted out facility, as is our Milledgeville home, with healthcare providers, but that's coming along, and so we are looking forward to opening it this year. And it's in Milledgeville, yes, sir. And so this will be a tremendous thing for our veterans. Also, under our portfolio, this is just a real quick eligibility criteria slide for our 2 veteran cemeteries. One is in Milledgeville, our largest one is in Milledgeville, and we have one in Glenville. But you can see what it takes to be able to be eligible, but then we like to say, you know, everything, once you get on the grounds of the cemetery, the costs are covered. So your interment, your markers, whether it's the columbarium or your headstone, all of that is covered. And so when you look at our 2 cemeteries, and I put these up here because there is funding in the governor's 24 budget. In Milledgeville, what the VA doesn't pay for is like upkeep to roads. They help pay for expansion. It's a 65% match for expansion. But the governor's budget does give us some funding for Milledgeville to do some renovations and repairs. And then in Glenville, we're running out of space. And so we've got some design funds and some beginning of some construction funds to open phase 2 of the Glenville Cemetery. That one's a much smaller cemetery by specifically 100 acres, but both are beautiful. They're kept up with the National Cemetery Administration standards. So whether you go to a national cemetery like Canton or you go to one of these 2 cemeteries, they will all look the same and are great memorials to those who have served. Just a couple other things that people really don't know fall under our department. So Veterans Education and Training. They are the folks that certify any institution, organization, apprenticeship, employer, OJT, to get a GI Bill or VA education benefits. So they go all over the state to certify that these folks are not predatory and are not taking our veterans' money or their earned VA benefits. And you can see we've got almost 1,800 schools and training establishments that have been certified by the state approving authority. We are the largest approver of on-the-job training. So for those of you who have businesses, if you get a veteran in and just fill out a simple form on our website and have somebody that says, here's their training, if they have GI Bill benefits that they're not going to use for formal education, that can help offset their salary or give them additional salary. That's big within, say, the manufacturing industry or other industries that may not be able to start them at a very high wage. Our on-the-job training program is second to none. Also, and to the question earlier, how do we get the word out? So this is also something we started about 8 months ago. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out. We actually have quite a few articles there on the PACT Act and are consistently refreshing that information. But we do, our Public Information Division, which is all of 2 people, does do this newsletter that goes out to all of our organizations, all the other veteran service organizations, to make sure they have the information. And then, of course, they maintain our website and all of our social media.
How do I get on this list?
We can send you the newsletter every month. We just published it Friday.
I would like to see it.
Yes, sir.
And I understand there's a couple of people that have another 3 o'clock.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so I'm on, I think, my last slide. So that's our website. You can get to it there. And 2 slides, actually. Just a plug, we are still doing the Vietnam Veteran Recognition Ceremony. So if you have a church group, a civic group, anybody where you want to recognize your Vietnam veterans, we are happy to send folks out there, get you their certificates, their pins, etc. We want to make sure that those folks are recognized. And then lastly, we did get a grant from the state of Georgia to get a statewide referral system for military and veterans. This gives us the ability, if they come into our office or our partners at the technical college system and the workforce boards, we can get them connected to resources in their communities. This QR code can be used for any veteran that's in need of care that's beyond benefits or something that we do, whether it's homelessness, food, employment, education. We are rolling that out, and I know the technical college system this month has started rolling it out with their institutions. So this is going to be transformational.
Can you just briefly expand on the scope of that? Because you go to a lot of the meetings with various veterans groups, Commissioner, and a lot of people are doing a lot of different things, but it's sort of scattered. It's not under one roof, or the availability is sort of not there. So I'm just wondering, can we sort of get everybody on the same page? And if they come to your office, you can refer them. Is that what you're saying to
Yes,
another?
sir.
Okay.
But here's what we'd also like to do. So we know there are many veteran organizations that work in silos. We're
There you
trying
go.
to create that connectivity across those silos. And so there's another QR code that I can send you, but we're trying to onboard those other organizations onto our platform so we can see the outcomes and we can send referrals back and forth, because not every organization does everything for every veteran.
That's
We need
right.
to work together. And that's what this platform will allow us to do.
Great, thank you. Great. That's really great.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry I took so
No, no,
long. I
that's-
can talk for a very long time
No,
about all of
that's-
this.
I'm sorry, I'm just writing some notes down here. That's why we asked you to come, because we knew there was going to be a lot of great information that we put out that some may have heard before, but always could use a refresher, and some are hearing for the first time. If you would, that monthly newsletter, if
Yes,
you could
sir.
send it to all the members of the
Absolutely.
committee, that I'd appreciate that. And so we do truly appreciate you coming. Some of the other things in addition to this that we're going to look at is you've seen the veterans courts, especially courts going on across the state. We're going to learn more about those as we go along. And there are several entities out there, in addition to Veteran Services, that are specifically geared towards housing for homeless vets. We're going to have some of them come and share ideas with us on that as well. So other than BRAC, homelessness, drug abuse because of PTSD, housing, and the judicial system, I think we got enough that we can build on something on this session. I was remiss. There's some other people back here that I didn't let introduce themselves when we got started. I start over here, so everybody always wonders who the people are in the back of the room. Tell us who you are.
My name is Rachel Moore, communications specialist with the Georgia Senate Press Office. So basically what we do as the press office is we do all the live streaming, PowerPoints, photo, video, writing, publications, press releases, social media, all of the above.
So she helps make sure that we get the word out of what's going on at the meetings.
Hi, I'm Logan Angle. I'm a Senate intern during this legislative session, so I'll help send your video.
And where do you go to school, Logan?
Go to West Georgia.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
I'm Carla Dawson. I'm senior policy analyst with the research office, so I do the bill summaries and research, whatever you need.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Vince Weekend with Legislative Council's office.
Okay, so we got everything from communications to lawyers and research. We're covering on the backside back here. Thank y'all so much for being here. I look forward to
Thanks,
working
sir.
with you. And this is not the end of the conversation that you and I will have. I'm sure that I'm counting on you to help me advance all we're doing for Georgia veterans.
Yes, sir. Thank
Anything
all of
else?
y'all.
All right,
Thank you.
meeting's adjourned. Thank you.